So I'm really excited that we have 4 people here to talk about the League of Kitchens. I'm going to read brief formal introductions of them, and then they will come and talk with you, and we can ask them questions about their experiences as well. First, we have Lisa Gross, who is the daughter of a Korean immigrant and a Jewish New Yorker. She was raised on one grandmother's doenjangguk and the other's matzo ball soup. The League of Kitchens is born out of her passion for New York City, her love of cooking, connection to the immigrant experience. Her work deals with questions of civic engagement, social history, cross-cultural relations, domestic space, and national. She is a former food writer for the New York Press and a frequent speaker at universities and conferences. Lisa received her MFA from the School of Museum of Fine Arts at Tufts University and has a BA from Yale University. Then we have Afsari Jahan, who was born in the town of Rajshahi in Bangladesh, where she grew up watching her mother cook. In Bangladesh, Afsari worked as a merchandiser in the garment industry. She later moved to Singapore with her husband and young son and started practicing her mother's recipes by preparing them as after-school snacks for her son's school. They moved to the U.S. in 2000 and settled in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, and both Afsari and her husband continue to work in the garment industry in Manhattan. Afsari also caters parties and large events and teaches classes at ROC New York, a nonprofit culinary organization. Despina Okunomu has an enthusiasm for using the freshest ingredients in her cooking. Perhaps she was inspired by the fig, pear, and pomegranate trees that grew in her childhood backyard, or maybe it was the access to the freshest fish in her coastal Halkidiki home of Greece. Despina moved to the U.S. in the 1970s, where she worked as a registered nurse for over 40 years. She is married and has 2 daughters, and her love of cooking has rubbed off on her older daughter, who started Babuki, a Greek food stand at the Essex Street Market. And last but not least, we have Molly O'Neill, who for 10 years was the food columnist at the New York Times Magazine and the host of the PBS series Great Food. She grew up in Columbus, Ohio, as the oldest and only daughter of 5 children. Her work has appeared, 6, I'm sorry. Her work has appeared in many national magazines, and she is the author of 3 cookbooks, including the New York Cookbook, her first book, which won both the Julia Child IACP and James Beard Awards. O'Neill is also the founder of cookandscribble.com, the online teaching platform for food writers, and the founder and creative director of the Longhouse Food Revival, the annual gathering of food thought leaders in Rensselaersville, I always mispronounce that word. Rensselaersville, New York. That has been called the Woodstock of food, and where the Oxford Food Symposium meets Burning Man. That sounds kind of wild. So we're actually going to hear from Lisa, Afsari, Despina, and then Molly will lead a discussion with the 3 of them up here. So before I have them come address you, they actually have a short film that gives you, I think, a really great overview of their organization. So I'll play that for you.
This is very, very special rice. You see the size?
Oh, yeah. It's very small.
Yeah, very small. That recipe inside the booklet, that is enough for the 4 people.
The name, the League of Kitchens, is obviously an allusion to the League of Nations, and we hope to create a kind of shadow United Nations where it's ordinary but really exceptional people sharing their culture and their cuisine. Our flagship offering, that's the 5.5-hour immersion, focused on 5 to 6 dishes.
You can find this food at the restaurant because those are like the home style cooking.
That should make sense.
Yeah.
I first found out about it because this class was a gift to me from my girlfriend, Allison. It just makes a big difference to do all of this from scratch and homemade as opposed to getting a different kind of product in a restaurant. It was also good to be in somebody's house. I felt like this was sort of more personal and kind of how you would really do it if you were going to cook this again for yourself.
Even though New York is actually statistically the most diverse place in the world right now, there's often very little meaningful interaction. So that's been one of the really exciting things about creating the League of Kitchens, is creating this opportunity for a more meaningful interaction and connection.
We attend any cuisine, like like any Indian cuisine or like the French cuisine or Korean cuisine, they just teach you how to cook. You can't know about their culture, how they eat, how they serve. Like all food and culture go together. We don't use any fork or spoon. Most of the time we eat by hand.
I liked how informal it was. I liked how it was really casual and it was in Asfari's home. We actually ate at her dining room table, eat her food. She grinded the spices for us. She prepared food for us within her own kitchen as opposed to using all these fancy tools.
Olive paneer is divine.
Thanks so much, Laura, and thanks so much for inviting us to participate tonight. The Tenement Museum has been such a source of inspiration for me, and it's one of my favorite places in New York, so it's such an honor to be here tonight. So I'm glad you all got to see that video, because it's helpful to kind of see things in action as just opposed to hearing me talk about it, and you'll get to hear Afsari speak after me. So what is the League of Kitchens? The League of Kitchens is an immersive culinary adventure in New York City, a sort of new kind of cooking school, where immigrants who are exceptional home cooks teach small, intimate cooking workshops in their own home kitchens. Currently, we have 6 instructors teaching. They are from Bangladesh, Greece, Korea, Afghanistan, India, and Lebanon. Thank you, Jessica, one of my colleagues. And we're actually in the process of training, and we will be adding 2 new instructors, one from Trinidad and one from Argentina. We have currently 2 offerings right now. One is what you saw in the video, which is sort of our flagship offering. It's the all-day 5.5-hour immersion. This is 4 to 5 people or 6 people in each workshop. Each workshop covers 5 to 6 recipes, starts with a light lunch, and goes for 5.5 hours and includes a full dinner. And then everybody goes home, not only with the recipes, but a starter kit of specialty ingredients and spices, so that everyone can really go home and make what they've learned, as opposed to what often happens in many cooking workshops I've taken. You learn all these great dishes, you go home, you have to go out and buy 10 new things, and you never end up making them. So this is a way to encourage people to really go home and to try these dishes they've learned. Then we also have a shorter offering called our Taste of workshops, which are 2.5 hours. Those focus on 2 to 3 dishes and are more of an opportunity for people to have a kind of cultural and culinary experience without the in-depth instruction. So I think there are a few very important things about what we're doing. One is that this experience offers a deep culinary learning experience. All our instructors do everything from scratch. They've cooked for years for their families, they learned from their mothers and grandmothers, and they really have a deep knowledge of their cuisine, the cultural context of their cuisine, techniques, their tools, and recipes. And one of the unique things about being in someone's home kitchen is you get to see not only how they cook, but what they cook with. So a lot of our instructors use culturally specific tools and utensils in their cooking, and you get to see that as well. During the workshop, you get to see these master cooks who do everything informally, right? They take a pinch of this, a handful of this, probably like many of our mothers, fathers, grandparents cook. But one of the things we do is we also work with a professional recipe writer and tester who works with each of our instructors to translate their informal recipes into tested, written recipes you get to take home and follow, so that you get to have both parts of that experience. Another element of this experience is this opportunity for exceptional eating. And as Afsari said in the video, for many cuisines, the kind of kind of an abbreviation of that food. For many cuisines, really the true expression of that cuisine is only available in someone's home, either because those dishes take a lot of time to make and or the ingredients are expensive, and so many times restaurants do a kind of version of these traditional dishes. So this is an opportunity to really see them in their full expression. That means also that you get to taste and cook a lot of recipes that aren't available in restaurants. Another aspect is the intimate social experience. As Laura mentioned, you're with 5 to 6 other people, and you really get to know them over 5.5 hours, and I think that's also something unique. How often do we go 5.5 hours to do anything really these days? And then there is the depth of cultural learning and exchange, and a big part of that is the specialness of being in somebody's home, where the instructors are not only teachers, but they're hosts and they're cultural ambassadors. And there's automatically and immediately a certain kind of intimacy that occurs when you are a guest in someone's home. So central to what we do as an organization is our social mission, and that has a few different elements. One is recognizing and celebrating the contributions of immigrants to our culture and society, and particularly our food culture. And I think this is a kind of welcome and refreshing contrast to our celebrity-focused food culture. And here we're really recognizing home cooks who have this very deep knowledge and expertise. And another element of our social mission is creating a platform for these exceptional home cooks to share their recipes and traditions with a much larger community than they would otherwise be able to. So often, if you are lucky enough to have a mother or grandmother or grandfather who's a great cook, maybe you get to learn from them, but very few other people get to. And so this is making their knowledge accessible to a much larger number of people. And then, as I mentioned before, this opportunity for cross-cultural learning, connection, and understanding, and an opportunity for meaningful engagement is really central to what we do. Because although, as I mentioned in the video, New York City right now is statistically the most diverse place in the planet, so often, the interactions that we have with people from other backgrounds are in service experiences. The person at the bodega, the person at the restaurant, and there's very little opportunity for any kind of meaningful conversation or discussion or exchange. So that is really central to what we do. And then lastly, we really believe in providing meaningful, well-paid employment and training and flipping the conventional power dynamics where often, as I mentioned, the immigrant is in this position where they are either being instructed or being in the position of serving, and here really it's the instructor who's the expert, the host, the cultural ambassador, the one that's sharing their expertise and knowledge. So that's a little bit about what we do, and I'm sure as we get into discussion we'll talk about it a lot more. Thank you.
Hi, I am Apsari. I am from Bangladesh. I moved this country 2000, but I moved overseas before that. I moved here before I live at Singapore. So when I move over there, before I don't have any cooking experience, nothing. Even I can't thinking about how I make my own tea. So when I moved over there, I missed my cuisine because over there they have mostly like the Chinese people and also Malaysian and South Indian cuisine. They are mixing. So we missed a lot our cuisine, and my son always complained, "Oh, I can't eat it. Could you cook for me? Can you cook for me?" Like that. And after that, I started cooking, and I just thinking how my mom was cooking. But when I saw after the finished dish, it's not like hard taste or like the same flavor, and I continuously call my mom, take the recipe and also how she cook, and I learned like this way. And after that, I love to cook, and each and every day I just try to experiment, and until when I get the same flavor what I missed. So everything I learned from my mistake. And I started cooking like this way, and after that, when I start cooking, so many friends comes to I'm very friendly and I love to hosting. So everyone asking me, can you cook for me? Can you cook for me? And I started one by one dish, like a catering for them. And also, at Singapore, they run our language schools, Saturday schools for the kids. And I started my catering journey from there. I started the snacks. First, like the very famous Indian snacks is samosa. We introduced our it. That when I move here, I continue my catering, and also little by little, I think I am more strong enough to teach the people, and I start one non-profit organization here in Manhattan, Restaurant Opportunity Center. So they trained the restaurant worker, those people, they don't have enough money to participate in the culinary school. So they run this program free of cost for the restaurant worker. So I teach over there most of the time, like the Indian cooking, and also in the side, I know that like the flower arrangement, like I turned that idea to the edible design. When I saw here, people are making money to sell their edible design with fruit, meat, vegetables. So I turned that idea to here, and I teach over there. Because, when the restaurant worker, they serve the food, they need to know how plating the food is the most important, not like the worst, but, like the first impression. When you serve your foods, it looks good, it feels good. Then you can think like what inside. Oh, it's great. So I teach like that way, and I always love to decorate my food. And after that, I met Lisa, beginning of 2013, and I started work with her, and I love to teach, and I start with her, and still now I am teaching the Indian. Actually, in Bangladeshi cuisine is not like the 100% Indian cuisine, but it's the mix of like the northern part of India, and also like there's some Pakistani and some Afghanistani. So our meat dish is mixing like that, but the other cuisine is from northern part of India. So if you visit Lexington Avenue, all the restaurants are Indian restaurants, but all the owner, the chef, everyone is Bangladeshi. So you see, so no one knows what is Bangladeshi cuisine. Actually, that is the northern Indian cuisine. So this is my story. So.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Despina Economou, and I'm from Chalkida, the capital of the second island in length after Crete. It's called Evia. It's southwest from Athens, and it's away from Athens only 1 hour. I learned to cook in my own home from my stepmother and my father, who used to be a cook. I started learning since I was small, 10, 12 years old, and that time was not, I didn't learn too much. But later on, when I got married and had children, I started cooking my recipes here in America. I came here in 1972, and I got married in 1977. I had my children, and it was really kind of hard having 2 kids and cook every day. I cannot imagine my day going by without cooking. Cooking was part of my daily routine. Cooking is very important to me because you choose your ingredients and you do not add additives. You do not use any additives, and this way your food becomes very healthy. Cooking is the single best thing you can do for your family's health and well-being. I love to cook and share the food with my family and friends, and it gives me pleasure to please others by doing that. I enjoy cooking because you create so many dishes and you are the creator of the food, how the food looks and how it tastes. It gives you the unique opportunity to decorate with so many colors from fruits and vegetables. There is also something therapeutic about stirring, rolling, mixing, and kneading. The best thing about cooking is that right after you have food to eat. Regarding my experience with a League of Kitchen, in the beginning I thought it was kind of strange having so many strangers in your house twice a month. You had to entertain them, clean your house, have everything soap. Everything had to be in the right place. I said, how can I entertain so many strangers in my house twice a month? But after having the students and introducing ourselves and having a little conversation, you become really, it becomes really easier after a half an hour to an hour, and by the end of 5 hours after cooking and helping each other, you got to know the people, and by then they leave and you say, oh, why they don't stay more? That's how the feeling you get after to know the students. And this is my story, and I'm retired now and I'm doing this twice a month. Thank you very much.
Big mouth. But do you need this? Oh, we're live streaming. Oh my God, I'd hate to sound dead on the live stream. That'd be terrible. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to make sure we address, or any ways that they'd like to direct the conversation before I step in with my very big mouth? Hi.
Actually, would you hear more about how
I'll repeat it. Perfect. You'd like to hear how these charming women renew their own identity
as migrants to as migrants
and right. Okay, that's a great question. Why don't we start with that? It was sort of fairly close to how I was imagining that we would start, and we're going to get there in just 1 second. You're patient. You're a lucky man. I was wondering, just, when you first came in 1972, You came from this small village on an island, and you came to another island that is not quite a small village, an island off the coast of America called New York. And do you have any memory of what it was like to eat here when you first came?
Yes. I was working as a nurse's aide in Massachusetts, Lowell, and I remember eating in the cafeteria, and the fish, it was fillet and it was tasteless. And I said, oh my God, is this the fish I'm going to eat in America? I didn't know that they had a whole fish with a bone. That's how I used to eat it when I was in my country. So when my father died and I went back home a year later, I asked my stepmother, can you make me fish for a week and greens? Greens are green vegetables that you cook and you eat them as a salad with a fish with lemon and olive oil. That was my first experience regarding the food.
And so were there any dishes that you ate in America that you liked?
Yes, I like the hamburger, I like McDonald's, I like all this fast food that we didn't have in Greece that time. Right. Now McDonald's is everywhere.
And then after coming back and you stayed, you built your own home. When you were cooking for your children, were you cooking from your mother or your stepmother and your father's sort of tradition, or were you cooking the food that they wanted to eat?
No, actually I cooked Greek food, and I remember my children were very bad eaters. And I had a really hard time because I'm a registered nurse. I wanted them to eat healthy, and they were very bad. I remember that. And I used to cook food and then go into the hospital to work, and I left it for my husband to heat it up. And my husband used to take the children to McDonald's.
Are they in prison today?
No.
They turned out okay?
Yes.
Oh, good.
So that was, yeah, very bad. They were very bad eaters, I remember.
But were there ways in which you renewed your own sense of being a young woman from Greece living in America? Did cooking help you remember who you are and where you came from? Did shopping help? Did you make other friends in the Greek expatriate community? How did you remember where you were from? How did you learn not to forget? Or maybe you did forget.
Yes, because I live in Astoria where most of the Greek people live, and I went to church, I had friends, Greek friends. At the same time, I made American friends from the hospitals. I used to work, so it was a mixture of friends, Greeks and Americans. Yes.
And was the church a large part of your early years here?
Yes, very large. I sent my kids to school, then to the Greek school. Then I took them out and they went to the American school, plus they were going to the afternoon Greek school, and they finished the Greek school.
I don't know how they had time to eat all those hamburgers between all that schooling.
They did.
And how about you? When you first came, what year did you come to the U.S.?
I came 2000.
2000, so not that long ago.
Not that long ago, but I know this city, especially New York City, because I working as a merchandiser. So it is always in my, imagination. I work first. My first job was I working for JCPenney, and I saw all the store in my dream. So when I visit, before I moved, I visit so many times, sometimes business trips, sometimes family trips. So I know this city very well before.
And do you remember the first time you came, or the first time you came to the United States? What was your earliest impression of the food that you had in the United States?
Oh my God. Most of the time I stay at Lexington Avenue Hotel. So I visit Lexington Avenue Indian or Bangladeshi restaurants. All the food, all the cuisine, you can find any different taste. They just make one sauce and they pour for
so maybe there's a great pipeline running up.
Yeah. So I can find any difference with curry, vegetable curry or fish curry or meat curry. But in our cuisine, we use completely different spice for the meat and the vegetable. So it was, I was always laughing about that. And I asked them, how you get that?
But what's so interesting to me is that you came to New York, you went to the Lexington Hotel, and then you trotted out to the Bangladeshi restaurants.
So it was over there, the Lexington, either you can eat, actually I am Muslim, so we always thinking, okay, if we have choice, we can get the halal food.
Go for halal.
But sometimes I visit the kosher food too. So that is also, in one sense, it is halal too. So in the daytime, we eat the pizza or pasta or something like any fast food or any burger or any sandwich. So during the dinner, okay, we just walk and we eat something. So we try that way. Because when I came for any business trip or something like that, I don't have enough time to visit Jackson Heights. But before, the Jackson Heights, now they have so many restaurants, but 5 years ago, you can't find like that.
So
now
you would say that the cooking that came to New York from your corner of the world has improved? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, now improved. You can get the exact taste from any Jackson Heights, any Bangladeshi restaurant, like the some home cooking restaurant. You can find that, but before, you can't.
And when you're teaching or catering, are you buying halal ingredients?
Most of the time I try, because the people, they knows me. When I catering my cuisine, most of my friends are family. And sometimes I do for office luncheon or office things. So they're asking, because nowadays the people are more known about their food, everything. So they're asking. So that's why I don't want to mix it. So I stick on the halal.
I've noticed in the last 2 years that even Restaurant Depot has got a fairly substantial halal section.
Yeah.
At upstate at Longhouse, we often buy halal meat because it's the cleanest meat at a decent price. And 3 years ago, that was difficult to come by. And last year, we could have bought 1 million chickens if we wanted to. There was really quite a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
And how about the various spices? Do you have trouble finding the spices that you want today, or do you have to go out of your way?
I always buy my spice from Jackson Heights, because over there, everything is fresh, not very old, because so many people visit not only New York, from the other state too.
Right.
So I just buy from Jackson Heights. Otherwise, in my neighborhood, you have to visit so many different stores. So,
and do you find it difficult living in Jackson Heights to remember who you are and where you came from, or is it just a no-brainer? You're surrounded by other people who are observant, other people who are Muslim, other people from Pakistan, other people from Bangladesh? Or are there rituals or things that you do to remember who you are?
Honestly, I don't feel like that way because I work with the multicultural, with the people. There's so many different type of peoples. When I work as a merchandiser in Bangladesh, that time we buy our raw materials from China, Korea, Hong Kong, those like the one part, and we sell our product either Europe or America. So I always surrounded by the like multicultural people. So I don't feel like that way.
And I wonder for each of you, when you have these strangers coming into your very clean houses, do you find that their questions are limited to cooking, or do you talk more about life? Do they ask you questions about your habits, your cultures, your traditions, or is everything limited to the dishes that you're teaching?
No, we just welcome as like a friends or family because they are spent almost 6 hours with us, sometimes 7 hours. Some people we open our kitchen if even our workshop from 1 to 6:30. So from 12, if anyone can come, they can come. So we just talk, we just ask them, tell your story, cooking, or what is your food habit, what food you like. Definitely you like my food, that's why you take my class. But besides that, so we just like they feel comfortable and we talk everything because this is League of Kitchens idea. We like not only the food, like the food is always the link of the culture. So when we talk a lot, and I talk a lot during the teaching, so it's not a stranger. After when any student come, we offer them our traditional drinks like a tea, and we just
hang out
like
you
this.
chill.
Yeah. Normally we talk like a minute, half a minute, each one of us. We say where are we from and a little bit about ourselves. And some people, they might have other questions, and if you feel comfortable answer them, then you do. Otherwise, you try to avoid the question and you say, I'm sorry, I cannot talk about this now in a nice way, so you don't offend people. Usually it's everything about cooking and food, the questions they ask.
Cooking's sort of the country of Switzerland in the public dialogue, isn't it? It's a safe place. Almost everybody eats. And most people are interested in how their food is made. So it's such a natural conversation starter. That's what I think is so brilliant about the League of Kitchens. In the years that I was a reporter, I was often sent to people's houses who weren't known as cooks, but were business people or politicians or criminals or what, and cook with them. And they talk. They always talk. Because when you're cooking together, there's a camaraderie that occurs, and you become human beings together. And you step outside your roles, and you're sort of shoulder to shoulder making dinner. And I so admire that about what the League of Kitchens is doing, because it's not at a time demystifying arriving cultures for the people who have already been living here for a generation or two or very, very exciting. So you only have 4 to 6 people twice a month.
Yes.
It's going to take you a while to get everybody in New York through your system.
Well,
How do you
working
plan
on
to
it.
do that, Lisa?
Well, hopefully more and more people find out about us, and as interest grows, we can grow too. Because the great thing also about having everyone teach these classes in their own home kitchens is potentially we could run 20 workshops in a weekend if there was that interest. But one thing I like about sort of thinking about this model too is it's sort of this distributed across the city learning model. You know?
It's wonderful.
Thank you.
It's really wonderful, and you don't have to worry about building some gigantic, fancy kitchen.
Right.
You're teaching people in the same setting that they'll be using the skills.
Exactly.
I love that.
Actually, we collect feedback surveys from all our students, and something one person said once was, I was so inspired making this incredible feast in a tiny New York City kitchen just like mine.
Yeah.
And it made me feel like, oh, I could do this. I don't need some fancy kitchen, some fancy equipment to make an incredible meal.
Right. And the great secret that every great cook knows is that as smaller is better. It's less to clean.
That's true.
Less steps to take.
Right.
Yeah. And so now this year you're adding 2 new...
Yes, we're adding 2 new instructors this winter, one from Trinidad and one from Argentina, and we are continuing to recruit new instructors.
When will you be getting some Chinese instructors?
We've been working on it. Interestingly, some of we've been really looking for instance, a Chinese instructor, a Mexican instructor, for communities in New York City that are so... It's actually been harder to find someone who has the English skills necessary and the cooking expertise. Because I think if you're Chinese in New York City, you can live your whole life never speaking English because there's such a huge, rich community in New York. And same with the Mexican community in New York. So ironically, it's been harder for us to find instructors from those communities.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Trying to think of who I know.
Yeah, if anybody knows anyone who they think would be a good instructor, let us know.
Yeah, there's a fantastic Mexican grocery store in Jackson Heights that many people from all over the East Coast, many chefs from all over the East Coast use. And that guy knows everybody. I'll send you his information.
Yeah.
He's quite a character. And he knows who's buying what and who's really particular what their skill level is.
And I think that is important. We look for very specific qualities in our instructors, and one of them is this real passion and commitment about ingredients and shopping at this store for meat and this store, with each of our instructors. As part of their kind of training orientation process, we go shopping with them at their favorite stores, and then we document where they shop and what they buy and why, and then that is provided to the students in these shopping guides that they receive as part of their packets.
Oh, they get a shopping guide too? This is a good deal. How much does it cost to do one of these?
So the 5.5-hour workshops are $195 per person, and that also includes the full dinner and the starter kit and the lunch. And then the 2.5-hour taste of workshops, so start with a snack, cover 2 to 3 dishes. Those are $100 per person.
Wow. That's a good deal.
Yeah, and also, they're basically private workshops. They're between 4 and 6 people in each workshop. So.
And do you have people who sign up to take all of the workshops?
Well, we have had some students who've signed up to take multiple workshops, and that's what we hope, because each workshop is a totally different experience, and totally different culture and food and everything. And all our instructors are just fabulous, interesting people, so it's really special to get to know each one of them in each different workshop.
Yeah. And one of the things that's so remarkable, given where we are sitting today, is that the newly arriving populations today are not all in one, what is this, 20 square city block. They're all over.
Yeah.
It's like 10 train transfers,
Right.
So it's so much more far-flung that having this resource becomes, I think, even more precious. It's really neat. Now, do you find that perhaps the nervous Greek bride might sign up to take a class?
Well, it's interesting you say that. We have had a few really interesting situations. For instance, we have an instructor from Afghanistan, and we had 3 people sign up, 2 parents and their adult son, and their adult son was marrying an Afghan woman. And so as a surprise to her, they wanted to do this workshop and learn to cook some Afghan food so they could cook it for her. So that was really
is so
wonderful.
cute.
Yeah, and I know we have, we also offer private workshops where for no extra cost, if you have a group of 5 people, you want to do a workshop, we can set that up for you. So we just did a private workshop with our Lebanese instructor. It was a Lebanese father and his adult kids and his wife, and they set this up as a surprise gift for him because he missed the taste of his mother's cooking in Lebanon. So
how cool.
they did this all-day cooking workshop for him.
You set one up for our scholars and
Yeah.
residents 2 summers ago, and
Yeah.
it was the highlight of their summer. They just adored it.
Yeah, yeah.
It was highly effective. We were, that summer for Longhouse, we were looking at the saffron diaspora and really trying to wrap our minds around the path of monotheism and the Muslim faith throughout the world, and then turn it into a food story, which was really complicated. I mean, had I had any idea when we started how complicated it would be, we would have not done that topic. And that class brought so much together for people because they were able to distill the conversation to a basic flavor palette and a basic approach. And from there, we were able to then go out and shoot the documentaries and shoot the videos and record the oral histories that we do. And it was a real linchpin. We felt quite at sea before that workshop. So
Yeah.
they work. Does anybody have any questions? Hi.
We're just going to ask people to go to the microphone so you can be part of the live stream as well.
Okay, thanks. So I have 2 questions. The first one is really easy. Do you also do desserts? And the second one is, what do you do about seasonality? Somebody mentioned that they had a pomegranate tree growing in their yard, and you can't get local lemons and pomegranates and things like that. I would assume when you were cooking in your native countries that everything was more seasonal, which has sort of fell out of favor in the U.S., which luckily it's now back. But so what do you do about, I guess, sourcing ingredients that are native to your cuisines that are sort of a little more seasonal?
Yes, we do desserts together with cooking. Your other question was about pomegranate.
Where do you get the ingredients?
Where do
Where do
we?
you get them? That
So they're in
sort of
season
close to
and
what
good.
you
Okay.
cook in Greece.
I get the ingredients from a store in Astoria. It's called Titan, and it has everything that I need to cook there.
And
Are
I'll
you
just say what-
really? Is the thrust of your question the tension between what is local and what is traditional? Is that what you're getting at?
What's in season?
Okay.
Well-
I mean, I think that's a really interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll also just say one thing, like for instance, in Despina's, one of her menus, when there are better tomatoes, she does a Greek salad that's amazing and unlike any Greek salad you've ever had. Or when it's not, she does this fabulous boiled greens dish, which is, much better in the winter. So we do try to take that into account somewhat with our menus. Yeah.
Yeah, when I don't like the tomatoes, I don't make the Greek salad. So, and what I found, summertime, the best tomatoes are from Long Island. They taste like the Greek tomatoes. So when I find these tomatoes, I make the Greek salad. Otherwise, I make the greens. I mix several greens, like spinach, chicory, and what is the other one?
Dandelion.
Yeah, dandelion. So I mix everything together, boil them about 5 minutes, And then my dressing is olive oil and lemon juice. Yeah, fresh lemon.
Are there any other questions? Hi, in the back.
Hi.
So this is fascinating. Thank you so much. And I haven't had your food yet, but I have had your daughter's wonderful food at the Essex Street Market, which is great. So I just had a question. And both of you mentioned, and you as well, mentioned grandmother's cooking or mother's cooking and how that's so important. And I'm wondering if you have any like tools or objects that you use to cook the food that you brought with you from your mother or from your country or your stepmother, like anything that you use when you prepare the food that's come from your country or that is still part of how you create the experience.
Yes, I brought a Tupperware from Greece. I used to sell Tupperware also in Greece. And one item I brought was this Tupperware that I make a Greek dessert. It's called halva. And I put it there, and it has a design. I don't...
Like a bundt pan.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And that's what I brought like 42 years ago, and I still have it.
Yeah, for me, I have also some special spoon for our dessert. We make like a very tiny ball dessert. So I have that spoon I bought from my country. And at the beginning, I use one cast iron flat pan to cook my bread. But now I use like a here cast iron pan. So I can.
But our Indian instructor, Yamini, actually has a lot of cooking vessels and dishes that she brought from India. That she has one beautiful handmade metal cooking vessel that was her mother's, and it has her mother's initials scratched into it. And she actually uses a lot of culturally specific cooking tools. And she also brings all her spices from India. She brings a lot of things from India. And then I was just going to say our new Trinidadian instructor, she has a custom-built tawa for making roti in the sort of outdoor kitchen she has, and she has custom-made wooden paddles for making it, and she's brought a lot of different things from Trinidad. So I think that's one of the really cool things about doing our workshops in someone's home is that you get to see all of those culturally specific tools.
So, I mean, I guess my question, too, is that does that then become points of departure for conversation for the participants? So do they say, oh, this is something my Italian grandmother had this? Or do people talk about the things that their parents or grandparents used when they were cooking, too? So more broadly, do people share their own cooking family stories?
Well, I'll pass on the microphone to them to answer that. But one other thing, too, I just wanted to mention is we do, when we're writing and testing the recipes, also make sure to create alternatives with tools people will have at home. For instance, Yamini's dosa workshop, she uses a tawa to make her dosas, but we tested it also with a nonstick pan, and it worked, and we wrote in the recipe how to do that so that students can have both experiences.
I think that might be really interesting to talk about is how has America, living in America, changed how you cook your food?
When I cook my cuisine, I don't change too much. I keep the original recipe, original taste. So everything is flavor, taste.
What about the way you eat, though? Do you eat any differently?
Oh, no.
In the film, you said we usually don't use flatware, but the people you had set the table with knives, forks, and spoons.
Yeah.
So that's a little teeny-weeny change. What else are you hiding over there?
No, when we eat at home, we use our hand. This is we never change. Yeah. But when at home, we eat our food. If we want to eat any other food, we go outside. this is, we love here, like she told, fast food, but we love Italian food.
Yeah.
Me, my son, my husband, everyone love Italian food. So we frequently visit Italian store. But at home is my food. Thank you.
Mainly I cook Greek food, but sometimes I might buy soy sauce. I might buy hot sauce, which we never used to have this type in Greece. So, and I love Chinese food also. But pretty much I cook Greek. I didn't change much. The only thing I do American is like hamburger, steaks, turkey, the roasted turkey now for Thanksgiving. But the rest of the daily food is Greek food.
Has any of that hot sauce found its way into any of your Greek food?
Not really.
No.
No.
And no soy sauce either?
When I cook only American food.
But your daughter is putting hot sauce in some of
Yes,
hers.
she does. She
Okay.
loves it.
Okay. So it takes a generation.
I would also say that, as Laura mentioned in my bio, my mother's Korean. She immigrated to the U.S. in the 70s, and my father's American, of Hungarian Jewish descent, grew up in New York.
Oh,
oh
my God.
My Korean grandmother lived with my family growing up, and actually she was the source of the inspiration for the League of Kitchens. I never learned to cook from her because she always shooed me out of the kitchen and said, oh, go study. Studying's more important. And then when I grew up and fell in love with cooking and wanted to cook Korean food, it was so frustrating to have lost that opportunity because it's so different to learn from a cookbook or a video than from a person. But at our dinner table, we always had one side that was Korean food and one side that was Western food. And my father used to call it the 39th parallel, which is the line that divides North and South Korea, because we would always have two sides to our dinner table.
It's really funny. Hi. Hello. Yes. Do you want to speak to...
Hello. I wanted to ask about, there was an article in the Sunday Times this week or the week before, it was with children having breakfast. And I know they had a similar culture. They had a child that was from Turkey who told her breakfast. But I'd very much like to hear our panelists what the typical breakfasts in their countries are.
Yes, the article is about what children around the world eat for breakfast.
Okay, in my country, people do not eat breakfast, which is very sad. Yes. They drink coffee, the Greek small coffee, they grab a cigarette, and they go to work.
What about children?
Okay.
All those kindergartners smoking butts.
Children, they eat breakfast, yes.
And what do they eat for breakfast?
They usually eat those, I don't know the name in English. Melba toast with a little butter and marmalade. They eat cereal because now they have the cereal there. Before, when I was growing up, they didn't. We used to eat, when I was growing up, bread with olive oil, a little salt, or tomato paste. These were the things we used to eat when I was growing up. But now it's totally different. They eat breakfast.
You know, in our country, we eat plain bread, like the chapati, here the roti. So in breakfast, sometimes 3 meals with the bread, but in the breakfast, little sauce or some fried potato, like julienne cut, and...
Like a French fry?
No, not the French fry, but very thin, hash, almost like that. So in the breakfast, we eat our chapati with that kind of things. In the lunch, we eat with meat, with the bread, In dinner, we eat with the vegetable, that bread. Everything is bread. Everything is bread.
I think there was a question in the back. Okay.
I'll use the microphone. I loved your story about tea when you were in Singapore. Like, I couldn't even make tea, right? But I don't know that everybody knows what that means. And I thought that would be kind of a fun story, for you to tell. What did it mean to make tea? But kind of going off Annie's question, how you all learned from a family member. And you kept saying, we make food, the real way, original way. Have you added anything of your own here to that recipe? Like, how are you contributing to the original recipe living here? Is there a difference, I think, from both of you? How are your greens different than, your grandma's greens?
No, my green is not too much difference because we use we visit most of the time like the Asian vegetable stores, like the Chinatowns, and I live berries over there also, huge Chinatown. So my vegetables, greens are similar from my country, but my tea making story is, in my country, like Lisa, her grandma told my mom, said, oh, no, don't want to come in the kitchen. When you are your own family, own life, you have to spend too much time in the kitchen. So go study. When you start your family life, then automatically you know how to cook. And I started my work when I was 23 years old. So I just finished my graduate schools and I start working. So I don't have any time, and I have a very lavish life over there. So many people help when I come to office. So someone bring tea for me or coffee for me. What do you like? Tea or coffee? Like that way. So someone opened my door, car door. So when I move overseas, then the real life started. That's why I am joking. I never know how to make the tea. In our country, we don't make the tea. We cook the tea. Mm-hmm. You know that? Cook the tea because we boil with milk and water and boil, and so after that we toss the tea leaf, not like the tea bag, right, like the raw tea leaf, and we just keep it for 5-10 minutes. So it means cook the tea. Mm-hmm. We don't add our milk outside before we add the milk. So this is
put the milk in the big container.
Is big container, and we boil like the 1/3 milk, 2/3 water. Then we boil and then we toss.
Do you put any cardamom in that? No. Only the tea leaves.
Just tea leaves.
Mm-hmm.
No masala. Masala, if you want, the outside.
Yeah.
So, and if you add, but most of the time we add some ginger.
Uh-huh.
So ginger,
dried or fresh?
No. The fresh ginger, we just crush it and we put when we boil the water, then.
When you say some, how much is some?
If one.
How about your thumb? How much of your thumb would you put in there if your thumb was ginger?
Oh, crushed ginger is 1 teaspoon for 1 cup of tea.
Oh, that's good.
Okay. So it's very good.
That just reminds me, one of the interesting things we've had to figure out solutions for is how to translate and document these informal family recipes into written recipes that students can take home and follow. So we've actually been working with a fabulous recipe writer and tester, Liz Tarpey, who devised all these different techniques, and I keep telling her she needs to do this just for people's family recipes. You know, everyone has this problem. They want to document their mom or their grandma's whatever, and then when they make it, it doesn't taste the same. So one of the things she does is when it comes to spicing, which is often so challenging, she has each of our instructors take what they would use, like, okay, looking at this amount, how much of this spice would you use or whatever, and then she holds out a piece of paper and has them put it on the piece of paper, and then she pours it off the paper into different measuring tools to figure out how much it is.
Yeah.
Because actually what we found is in the beginning when we did a little pilot and I did some recipe writing just to sort of figure out what we would need to do, you know, the instructors I was working with, they would round up. They would just say, oh, everything was about a teaspoon, or about a tablespoon, or about a quarter teaspoon, but then they would taste it and say, oh, this is all wrong. So we had to really kind of encourage them not to think in terms of those units, but just to do whatever they would normally do, and then we would sort of quantify it and write it down, and then, you know, the students would have that to take home.
I don't know if it would be at all helpful, but when I was doing the New York cookbook, which was a gathering of recipes from home cooks, and it was before people did that.
Yeah.
So there was no kind of protocol.
Yeah.
And I would just show up in people's kitchens and we'd cook together. And I had been a chef, so I can reconstruct pretty well from memory. But if you give a home cook a recipe that you have reconstructed, it's never right. And so what I ended up doing was asking them what all the ingredients were and about how much. And then I made a mise en place with 3 times that much of everything. And then did volume weight and metric weight after.
Yeah.
You know, there's no way around it.
Right.
And then it's just watching, you know, when does each piece get put in?
Right, exactly.
You know, are you starting the skillet with it? Are you finishing?
Right. Yeah. Liz shows up with her ruler, her scale, her measuring spoons, and dry and wet units.
Yep.
And then just is catching them. Wait, hold on. Let me measure that.
Yeah.
But don't before you put that
If you put it all out before, you never have to stop them.
Yeah.
And then they never have to think.
That's
and
interesting.
so they're cooking from
Right,
instinct, and they never become self-conscious.
Yeah.
And you don't have to intrude on the process.
Yeah. So you just measure what's left.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an interesting idea.
It works.
Yeah.
When I did one big table, I collected 5,000 recipes.
I know, it's an amazing cookbook.
And well, no, I mean only I think 500 or 700 are in there, but it was a lot of collection.
Yeah.
And that technique really worked because you could just sort of put it out and then step away from the stove, and you know, measure it at the end. Be fastidious at the end.
Yeah.
And I found that the cooks were then far less. One of the things that happens, and maybe you've had this experience, maybe not, but particularly because so many of the great home cooks are women, there's this sense of, oh, did I do it wrong, or do you not understand, or gosh, is that, you know, that self-doubt surfaces. And as far as you can remove yourself from the process, brings the best of their heart and their instinct to the dish.
Yeah.
And I mean, if I could not be in the room and interview them, it would probably be really great, you know.
Well, I think that's one thing, you know, since we only launched last February, I didn't mention that, so we're very new. And so we've really been learning a ton over the last year. And one thing we realized very early on was that it worked much better if our instructors did not try to reference the written recipes, because it would be sort of confusing and, you know, sort of take them out of their flow. So basically what we emphasized in the beginning was just cook how you always cook, right? And don't worry about the recipes, just know the students have them, can take them home and use them, and just cook as you always cook, and just say, like, oh, I just take a bit of this and a bit of that, and they get to see that, because that's also something special. Not everyone has, you know, a really exceptional cook in their family, And to see someone, who's been cooking like that for so many years, and their kind of fluency and that beautiful choreography and how they just smell things and taste things and sense things, that's such a great thing to see. So we didn't want to intrude on that.
That's a real gift, because so much of the teaching of cooking has become so, systematized. And you learn not to trust your own senses.
Yeah.
And if you can empower the young cooks to trust what they smell, what they hear, what they feel, then they become real cooks, not just like these little automatons following a recipe.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's great.
Well, it's all them.
Are there any other questions? Well, I have one final question. When are we going to see the League of Kitchens cookbook?
Hopefully soon. Actually, the other thing that I'm very interested in doing is videos, potentially.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, you need
or
that.
Or a TV show or something. So
we'll
see.
Yeah, you definitely need
soon.
that.
Yeah.
Well, I think there are probably books for sale here. If anybody has any other questions, we're going to be here for a little while.
I have one question.
Oh, yay.
Just a comment. I think it's so cool. One of the questions about culturally specific tools, and I think it would be so cool to talk about Sunny and how she's almost recreating these Korean traditions at her home, because it's so interesting.
Sunny is our Korean instructor. One thing that's very unique about her, she's in her early 70s, and she actually makes her own soy sauce and doenjang, fermented miso paste, from scratch every year. And then she ferments them in traditional ceramic crocks on her porch in Bayside, on the front stoop. And she also does a huge batch of kimchi every winter and then buries it in her backyard in traditional ceramic fermenting jars, and has an incredible garden in a very tiny backyard where she grows over 30 kinds of Korean vegetables and has 6 fruit trees and makes her own plum wine.
What a trip.
Yeah, it's amazing. And what's unique about her is that she was almost the holy grail to find, because in the Korean community, it's very difficult to find someone who has that kind of knowledge who also speaks English. But she is actually married to a Methodist minister, and they lived in West Virginia, they lived in Baltimore, they lived in Kentucky, so she spoke English better and was comfortable having strangers in her home, because also Korean culture is very insular usually, and that was very difficult. So it was very exciting to find someone who had that knowledge and expertise who could also share it and teach it. Right now, all of the cooks are women. We are open to hiring men, but I think what that shows is, around the world, most of the everyday cooking is done by women. And, in our sort of popular food culture, most of the chefs that are focused on are men. And
well, that's happened in the last 15 years. And it's, I think, one of the great things about what you're doing is this constant reminder of how bogus that is.
Yeah. And so it's so wonderful to be able to really foreground these women and their incredible expertise and knowledge.
Well, thank you, everyone.
I just wanted to say thank you again. I'm sure you all are sufficiently hungry and ready to go and eat dinner. But Molly's right. We do have, I think, 2 of her books. Yeah, we do. They don't have, their book is out yet, remember? So the New York cookbook that she referenced, and One Big Table, I believe, as well. And since you're here tonight, we're selling them at 15% discount. I hope you all come back to another Tenement Talk next week. We're having a really, I think, exciting program featuring Meyer London, who in 1914 became the second socialist ever elected to Congress. And I think he was the last, right? Yeah, the only one. And he was from this neighborhood. He's a figure who was incredibly influential and important, and I think is very much forgotten about. So we're going to have an actor coming to read some of his speeches, and a panel of experts. His grandniece or great-niece is going to be here. Rabbi Andy Bachman is going to be here to kind of talk about contemporary progressive politics in New York today. And then the week after that, we are having a talk on All of a Kind Family, which is a beloved children's book series. The series is being reissued, and so we're going to have a conversation about the influence that those stories have had on many, many generations. So thank you for coming. I thank Con Edison for providing us the funding to have this free program, and I hope I see you all back at the Tenement Museum. Good night.